Coming up, a Walter Mitty fantasy coming true. You too can be a helicopter door gunner.
This dream aircraft could be yours. We go flying with the former owner of the AOPA sweepstakes airplane as he becomes reacquainted with an old friend. We turn the interview format on its head with one of aviation's superstars.
And AOPA challenges the feds. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment.
The dream is real, a truly affordable personal jet aircraft. The Subsonics kit is priced at only $42,000. Kit plus engine is still under $100K. Add instruments, upholstery, and paint and you're flying at SonicsAircraft.com.
If you're the only game in town, you can charge what you want, but this is no game.
Think about all the airports you've flown into where there is only one FBO. And as hundreds of you have told AOPA, many of those single-source FBOs are holding pilots hostage and charging unfair prices.
It's about a few players that have decided to charge what I consider to be unreasonable ramp fees, and maybe almost hold you as hostage unless you pay a bunch of money for a bunch of high-priced fuel, which no longer allows a free market. And I think that's the key fundamental issue here is we're not telling people what the price of fuel should be. We have the choice of buying fuel a lot of places, but I don't believe a public airport should be charging egregious ramp fees to allow you to go from a public runway to a public roadway.
Some of those fees can really be eye-popping. $2,500 to park for 15 minutes at Boston's Logan International just to drop off a passenger. Well, that may be extreme, but at Scottsdale, $300 to wait on the ramp for 40 minutes, $200 to pick up a passenger in Ithaca, New York. We have many, many more examples. AOPA members complain that most often the locations are signature FBOs, but it's not just signature.
We have members' inputs from all over the country. It could be a single, unit provider, but seems to be the problem primarily when there is no competition. And, we have a lot of really good operators out there doing a really great job in small airports, medium-sized airports, and large airports. They're good friends of aviators and our members and great service. But there are a few operators, when they seem to be by themselves on the airport and don't have any competition, they take advantage of the situation.
AOPA is asking the FAA to give general aviation pilots options for getting onto and off of public airports without being hit with excessive fees, especially when no services are required. And this may have to go to some kind of federal or congressional investigation to encourage the FAA to take a more proactive stance in assuring fair and reasonable access and practices at airports that accept federal funding.
This is going to be a long fight, and it's going to be something we need our members' support on, but we will prevail. It's important that we have a reasonable cost in aviation, where we have operators that are taking advantage of a situation by being a sole provider. We have to stand up to it. So we're looking forward to serving our members and making sure the right thing comes out.
This is a complicated issue. Read more about it in my story on our website. You'll also find there a form to report instances of what you think are overcharges. So Melissa, we've discovered in looking at the data that members have given us, it's really seeming to imply that the whole FBO consolidation that we've seen over the past 5 to really almost 10 years now, this has been going on. Big chains gobbling up smaller independent FBOs. Is really kind of driving this, and we've been working on it for quite a while.
Yes, yeah, we have, and I think your story goes into more in depth on that point. And we want businesses to be profitable, but not onerous charges and unreasonable fees.
That's an excellent point. I've flown a lot in Europe, particularly last year, and we don't have a network of FBOs in Europe like we have, and it's a real inconvenience when you're flying in Europe. And so we want to maintain the FBOs, facilities that we have. We want them to be profitable, but there is a fine line there between, charging too much and reasonable profits.
Exactly. So I'm glad we're tackling this one. It's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
And AOPA is tackling another big issue and taking on the National Transportation Safety Board. AOPA thinks NTSB is speculating on the probable cause of some GA accidents with little evidence to support its conclusions. In this letter to NTSB's acting chairman, AOPA Senior Vice President of Government Affairs, Jim Kuhn, said that the speculative practices seem to be finding their way into the culture of the data-driven safety agency.
We have become increasingly concerned over the last year and a half where general aviation accident probable causes in these reports are really, in our opinion, speculative. And so we want to make sure that we've asked the NTSB board to do an internal review at the staff level to ensure that there are not any individual personal agendas being incorporated into these reports.
Kuhn cited 2 recent accident reports where NTSB staff listed pilot incapacitation due to a cardiovascular event as the probable cause of the fatal accidents, even though there was no direct evidence of that. Evidence-based determination of a probable cause is particularly important because Congress has told NTSB to report back in 5 years on the impact of basic med on general aviation safety.
Class B airspace is designated around the busiest airports for safety and efficiency, but what happens when the airport is no longer all that busy? Case in point, Cincinnati North Kentucky International Airport. Used to be an airline hub, but now for 5 years running, it no longer meets the Class Bravo criteria. So AOPA says it should be taken back to Class C airspace. That would make it easier and cheaper for GA to fly there, and cheaper for the taxpayers too. It's never been done, but AOPA is urging FAA to develop criteria for rolling back Class B airspace. So another one that you guys have been working on for quite a while, and there are a number of airports around the country that at one point were hubs, had a lot of traffic, and not so much anymore.
Yes, Cincinnati's just one of them. Now the FAA does a good job of updating Class B airspace, but they had no mechanism for actually eliminating it or downgrading it. So that's what we're working on, and I think we're getting some traction, so stay tuned.
Yeah, good.
Knowing about airspace is one important factor in pre-flight planning. Airspace awareness is just one of the things made easier with the AOPA Flight Planner. Our most recent improvements include the all-new interactive graphical briefing powered by our integration with Leidos Flight Service.
Saying a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we've tried to carry that into this tool and make it visual and graphical so that you can see where these NOTAMs are in relationship to your route line.
You can learn all about the AOPA Flight Planner features in our most recent webinar, and you can find the webinar on our website. By no small coincidence, that webinar features a flight to Lakeland, Florida, the home of Sun and Fun. The show begins Tuesday and we'll be there. You can get hands-on demo of the Flight Planner, and we have a wide range of programs and seminars. You can learn more about basic med and the ins and outs of ADSB in and out. Get your chops back with a Rusty Pilot seminar, or grab coffee and donuts with the boss. Or spend a few moments with Airshow pilot Patty Wagstaff and get an autograph.
An AOPA ambassador will be performing at Sun and Fun next week. Mike Goulian this year is celebrating 30 years as an airshow pilot, and he'll be ripping things up in his extra. AOPA editor-at-large Dave Hirschman had a chance to get to know Goulian a little better in an interview with a twist.
Pilots need to think quickly and clearly, but how about upside down while flying in formation? Watch Airshow pilot Mike Goulian answer some tough questions while hanging from the straps over his native New England.
When did you join AOPA, and what is your AOPA number?
Hey, so my AOPA number is 105-8365, and this makes me feel kind of old because I actually joined AOPA in 1990. I was probably about 20 years old then, and I still feel like I'm 20, but I guess I'm not looking at the date on my card.
Who's the best pilot you've ever known, and who influenced you the most as a pilot?
So I probably learned the most from my dad, and not that my dad was like the most amazing pilot there ever was, but what he taught me was to be really comfortable in the air and feel the airplane. He was so relaxed when he flew, and that's kind of what I try to do now. Is I try to let the airplane, it sounds a little cliche, but let the airplane talk to me.
And what's your airplane telling you now?
I can tell you what the airplane's telling me now is that it's the middle of the winter and I haven't been doing a lot of aerobatic flying because my head hurts.
And what's the dumbest thing you ever did in an airplane?
When I was a kid, I actually taxied my very first pit special into a helicopter dolly. It was really pretty dumb. I was looking left and going right, and pretty stupid. My dad he was so disappointed that I just was being so careless, you know. I called him on the phone. He wasn't at the airport, and he picked up. I said, "Dad, it's me." He said, "Yeah, what'd you do to the pits?" It's like, well, how did you know that I did something big? He's like, why else would you call me on a Sunday afternoon? I'm watching the Patriots.
And what's the funniest thing you've ever seen while flying?
We were in the King Air at JFK back a long time ago, and there was an Alitalia 747 that landed, and we watched him land and bounce probably 15 feet back in the air, and he went by our windshield level, and I could hear the JFK controller say to the Alitalia, hey, can you make that next turn off? And all you could hear was the guy in an Italian accent saying, negative, negative. It was quite funny.
I wonder what your favorite aerobatic maneuver is and whether you'd show it to us.
Well, boy, I'll tell you what, I love to do all kinds of aerobatic maneuvers, but the one that every kid just loves to see is a big old loop, because the airplane gets so far up in the sky, you make a big, huge circle. I can see my own smoke trail, a little weightless on the top, coming back down the bottom. And it's what every kid wants to do, is a loop-de-loop. And I have to tell you, when you're inspiring kids, that's the maneuver you want to show them.
Amazing stuff. In addition to Sun and Fun, Goulian will be flying in the Red Bull Air Race in San Diego, April 15th and 16th. We'll be there with coverage of the race, and if you're interested in more about Mike, you can read it in the upcoming issue of Flight Training Magazine. He is an amazing guy, I got to say. He's fun to be around, and thanks, Mike, for your participation with us and kind of a fun interview that way.
That's a really fun story. I enjoyed that.
When we come back, ripping up the desert from a helicopter gunship. You can do it too.
And getting reacquainted with an old friend.
The smoke is on. Perfect start. He's putting on the pressure. What a dramatic finale.
The Red Bull Air Race World Championship returns to San Diego Bay, April 15th and 16th. And play Red Bull Air Race, the game.
The pilot community is going to grow rapidly, according to the FAA. Drone pilots, that is. The FAA's latest aviation forecast is out, and in one of the scenarios from the feds, remote pilots with Part 107 certificates could outnumber all manned aircraft pilots by 2021. The long-term outlook for GA is stable to optimistic. The GA fleet is expected to grow at the high end, with turbine-powered aircraft offsetting the continuing retirement of piston aircraft.
And the feds are about to take the next step in an evolving policy to make it easier for manufacturers to bring lower-cost, safety-enhancing equipment from the experimental world into certificated aircraft. This video shows what happens when the Garmin blue level button is pushed right at the stall brake in an experimental RV3. The G5 attitude indicator has already been STC'd for many certificated aircraft. The FAA is now working towards ways to bring more of this non-TSO'd equipment to certificated airplanes. The plan is to use more of a risk-based process for evaluating the certification standards of such equipment, all without compromising safety. You can read more about it in my story up now on our website. By the way, the autopilot and attitude indicator in the RV3 cost $3,500, not including installation. And soon you'll be able to install a Garmin G5 as a replacement horizontal situation indicator in type certificated aircraft. Garmin is expecting an STC to be issued soon to use the G5 as a directional indicator. 2 G5s in the panel eliminates the need for a vacuum system for heading and attitude information. A dual G5 package starts at $4,600. And so, amazing values that we can see for some of this really, really great gear coming out of the experimental world. I mean, those kind of prices would be multiples higher if we use normal legacy kind of equipment in these airplanes. So really good progress. Kudos to the FAA for their willingness to kind of step up, look at their processes and policies and make some changes.
I think we might have hit the tipping point with FAA, and I think really good things coming quickly now.
Yep, definitely.
And a G5 is in the center panel of our like-new 172 sweepstakes airplane. The Yingling Ascend 172 was remanufactured from spinner to tail. The airplane was generously donated to AOPA before it underwent a restoration. AOPA senior editor Jill Tallman recently reintroduced the Skyhawk to its former owner.
Wow. We asked the former owner of our Sweepstakes 172, Tom Johnson, and his son Jeff, if they'd like to come see the completed airplane and take it for a flight.
Hard to believe it's the same airplane.
Tom owned the airplane for decades, and Jeff grew up flying in it. Tom was introduced to all the pano enhancements, including the angle of attack indicator and the Garmin G5, before editor-at-large Dave Hirschman took Tom and Jeff for a flight.
All right, she's all yours. So what are your initial impression of the airplane?
Controls feel a lot smoother than they were. Certainly tell the difference on the takeoff roll in terms of the 180 horsepower.
Is it so different that it just feels like a completely different airplane?
It feels like a new airplane.
Johnson was particularly interested in checking out the microaerodynamics vortex generators, flying the airplane close to a stall.
Yeah, the controllability here, you know, what's our airspeed here?
It's 0. It's, you know, the indicating
essentially
0.
0. And the airplane's very stable.
Like you've been flying this airplane yesterday.
It's been a while, but it comes back.
After the flight, Tom and Jeff had a chance to recreate an old picture of Jeff at Oshkosh in front of the airplane. Both the airplane and Jeff have undergone a transformation.
It's phenomenal to see that it's getting a new life. It had been not flown a lot for the previous 10 years prior to donating it to the AOPA, and I'd rather see the airplane out there and being flown and being used, and it's certainly they've done a wonderful job of renovating it, making it feel like a brand new airplane.
Jill Tallman, AOPA Live.
If you want a chance to see the sweepstakes plane in person, it will be at Sun and Fun next week. You can also see it at our first regional fly-in of the year in Camarillo, California, April 28th and 29th.
And now for a flying experience like none other. A new company called Gunship Helicopters is on the cutting edge of finding new ways to use aviation to satisfy thrill seekers. I had the tough duty of flying out to Las Vegas and trying my hand at being a door gunner. The occasional ping of a .223 caliber bullet hitting a steel target 50 yards away is among the most visceral rewards of shooting a semi-automatic weapon out of a moving helicopter. The sounds, combined with the smell of gunpowder and a bit of turbine exhaust entering the cockpit from the open door, well, hey, they create an experience like none other. Definitely a first for me. Rather than a lot of pings, though, more often than not, I see a puff of dust on the desert ridge as I miss the mark. But hey, no matter, it's great fun anyhow. Just what Gunship Helicopters is after, creating a unique, fun, and safe experience for those visiting Sin City. Partnering with Speed Vegas, a new exotic car racetrack, and other venues, the company gives up to 3 guests at a time the chance to experience aviation in a new way, all for about $400 each, a not uncommon price point for such opportunities around Las Vegas. Having started operations at the beginning of 2017, experienced FBO owner Bob Faunestock knows they only have one chance to get it right.
You know, our number one priority here is safety, and number 2 and number 3 is also safety.
The program operates under stringent Part 135 charter rules. And hey, you can't bring your own gun or ammo. You never get to handle the weapon until over the 71-acre privately owned old mining valley in the desert. And you'll pass a number of security hurdles before ever getting into the helicopter, including a breathalyzer test, a metal detector check, and watching a safety video.
You know, we really use a lot of due diligence to make sure that the weapon, the ammunition, and the shooter are all ready and prepared for the experience. And when it's time to combine them all, we combine them all, and the person goes out and has a great time.
Even the gun rack and a mount have passed FAA scrutiny with an STC. The mount was custom designed for Gunship Helicopters and restricts the firing range to prevent shots at the skid or the main rotor blade. The gun, an FN M249 saw, was also carefully chosen.
A very reliable weapon. It shoots .223 or 5.56. FN has only made it in one version, fully automatic, for years. They finally just last year came out with a semi-automatic.
So how do you end up in the business of shooting guns out of a helicopter? Faunestock sold his helicopter parts and repair business at Nevada's Boulder City Airport and was planning to focus on his FBO business, thinking life would slow down. But at the same time, his son Matt was looking for a career flying helicopters, which gave him the motivation to start the business.
For my son, just getting into this business has been an excellent education for him. And for me as a father, that's why I'm doing it. I get to work with my kid. We get to fly helicopters and shoot guns.
I can always come to him for questions about sort of things. You know, he's been in the industry a very long time. It's a great experience. It's a lot of fun.
The current shooting experience is just the beginning of what the company hopes to offer in the future.
We definitely like to expand, maybe get bigger helicopters, bigger weapons, have larger things to shoot at.
For now, though, the chance to shoot an M249 belt-fed machine gun blasting away at the desert from a moving helicopter, well, hey, that'll just make your day. So, an amazing experience. I got to tell you, I've done a lot of cool stuff over the years, but that was really a lot of fun. I mean, I like to shoot, I like helicopters, to be able to do it over the desert, shooting at those targets. Although I would be in favor of the larger targets that they're talking about getting.
Well, I have to admit, I'm jealous probably for one of the few times, because I target shoot on weekends. It's a hobby of mine, and lucky you.
Yeah, all right.
I'll have to do that.
You too can do this. It's just part with a few $100. And that does it for us. Next week, we'll be in Lakeland, Florida for Sun and Fun. We mentioned that already. And if you're there, please stop by the AOPA tent. Lots of interesting stuff will be going on there.
And we'll leave you with some shots of Red Bull Air Racer Kirby Chambliss ripping up the skies over San Diego. As we mentioned earlier, the next race is April 15th and 16th, and you can get discounted tickets through AOPA. Just visit our website.
And we hope you'll visit us again next Thursday from Florida for another edition of AOPA Live This Week.